Good morning, students. This is economic revision lesson provided by the Ministry of Education. This is the second revision lesson of Unit 3 Theory of Consumer Behavior. The second lesson of the Theory of Consumer Behavior is the ordinal utility theory or the indifference curve approach. The ordinal utility theory states that utility is not measurable. Rather, a consumer can rank or order the satisfaction that he or she derives from consumption of goods and services. In the previous revision, we saw the cardinal utility theory, which is a theory that states utility is measurable. Rather, under the ordinal utility theory approach or the indifference curve approach, utility is not measurable. That means it is difficult to attach numbers for the satisfaction that we derive from consumption of goods and services. So utility is not measurable. Rather, a consumer can rank or order the satisfaction that is derived from consumption of goods and services. Here are the assumptions of the ordinal utility theory or the indifference curve approach. First of all, the consumer is rational. That means the consumer has a clear-cut preference and the consumer's maximum objective is maximizing total utility. The second one is there is complete ordering. That means a consumer can rank or order the satisfaction that is derived from consumption of goods and services. The other assumption or precondition that must be fulfilled for the ordinal utility theory is consistency. That means if a consumer prefers bundle A than bundle B, then at the same time he must not prefer bundle B than bundle A. This is consistency. The other assumption is transitivity. This assumption tells us if a consumer prefers bundle A than bundle B and bundle B than bundle C, then a consumer must prefer bundle A than bundle C. This tells us if 3 is greater than 2 and 2 is greater than 1, then 3 must be greater than 1. This is transitivity, one of the assumptions of the ordinal utility theory. And during diminishing marginal rate of substitution, this diminishing marginal rate of substitution means the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution is in operation. The principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution tells us the rate by which one commodity is substituted on the same indifference curve will always decline. In short, it tells us the marginal rate of substitution, the MRS of a commodity will always decline. And the last assumption is non-satiation, means the bigger bundle is always preferred than that of the smaller one. So these are the assumptions of the ordinal utility theory. The indifference set shows the various combinations of two commodities that give a consumer equal level of satisfaction. Suppose a consumer consumes two goods X and Y. Now, at combination A, the satisfaction that a consumer derives from 1 unit of commodity X and 8 units of commodity Y is always equals to the satisfaction that he derives from consumption of 2 units of X and 5 units of Y. Because as we increase the consumption of commodity X, we are declining consumption of commodity Y. Again, when we come across from combination B to C, the satisfaction that a consumer derives from 2 units of X and 5 units of Y is always equal to the satisfaction that he got from the combination of 3 units of X and 3 units of Y. Because as we increase the consumption of good X, we are declining consumption of good Y. And finally, when we come across from combination C to combination D, then the satisfaction that a consumer derives from 3 units of X and 3 units of Y is always equal to the satisfaction that he derives from 4 units of X and 2 units of Y. Because as we increase the consumption of X, we are declining consumption of commodity Y. So, in this case, the consumer will be indifferent. Shall I consume 1 unit of X and 8 units of Y, or 2 units of x and 5 units of y. No, I have better to consume 3 units of x and 3 units of y. Or no, it is better to consume 4 units of x and 2 units of good y. In this case, the consumer will be indifferent. For example, let's take this x as orange and this y as banana. This indicates that the satisfaction that we get from 1 orange and 8 banana is equal to that of the satisfaction that we get from 2 orange and 5 banana. Because as we increased consumption of orange, we are declining consumption of banana. Combination B to C, the satisfaction that we get from 2 orange and 5 banana is equal to that of the satisfaction that we get from the combination of 3 orange and 3 banana. Because as we increased consumption of orange, we are declining consumption of banana. Finally, when we come across from combination C to combination D, the satisfaction that we get from 3 orange and 3 banana is equal to that of the satisfaction that we get from the combination of 4 orange and 2 banana. Because as we increased consumption of orange, we are declining consumption of banana. In this case, we will be indifferent. Shall I consume 1 orange and 8 banana or 2 orange and 5 banana? No, it's better to consume 3 orange and 3 banana. No. I have better to consume 4 units of orange and 2 bananas. In this case, the consumer will be indifferent. This is the case that leads to the indifference set. Now, let's represent the indifference sets on a curve called the indifference curve. The indifference curve shows the various combinations of 2 commodities that gives a consumer equal level of satisfaction. So this is the graphical presentation of the indifference sets. At combination A, the satisfaction that the consumer derives from 1 unit of X and 8 units of Y is equal to that of the combination B, which is 2 units of X and 5 units of Y. Again, at this point, it is equal to that of the satisfaction that he got from 3 units of Y and 3 units of X. And at combination D, it is equal to the satisfaction that he got from the combination of 4 units of X and 2 units of Y. And when we join these points together, point A, B, C, and D, we get the indifference curve. This curve shows the various combinations of the 2 commodities that gives a consumer equal level of satisfaction. On the indifference curve, any point on the indifference curve gives equal level of satisfaction. Next, let's see the marginal rate of substitution. The marginal rate of substitution is the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another on the same indifference curve. From the indifference sets, the marginal rate of substitution of commodity X for Y is calculated by dividing change in the commodity Y, which is given up, for the changing commodity X, which is gained. This means change in Y is Y final minus Y initial, and change in X is X final minus X initial. So when we are going to calculate the marginal rate of substitution of X for Y from combination A to combination B, if the satisfaction that we get from 1 unit of commodity X and 8 units of commodity Y is equal to that of 2 units of X and 5 units of Y, hence the rate by which one good is substituted for another is 3. This is mathematically the marginal rate of substitution, MRS of X for Y, is the changing commodity Y that is given up for the changing commodity X that is gained. This is Y final minus Y initial divided by X final minus X initial. And let's take this one as X initial and this 2 as X final. let's take this 8 as y initial and this 5 as y final, and when we substitute this information on this formula, the value of y final is 5 minus the value of y initial is 8 divided by the value of x final is 2 minus the value of x initial is 1, and this will give you 5 minus 8, which is minus 3 divided by 1, and this is minus 3, and when we put it out of absolute value, we left with 3. That means when we come across from combination A to combination B, if the satisfaction that we get from 1 unit of x and 8 unit of y is equal to that of 2 unit of x and 5 unit of y, the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another, one x is substituted for how many units of y? For 3 units of y. This is the way of calculating the marginal rate of substitution. Again, when we come across from combination B to C, if the satisfaction that we get from 2 units of x and 5 units of y is equal to that of 3 units of x and 3 units of y, then the marginal rate of substitution will be, let's take this 5 as y initial and this 3 as y final, and let's take this 2 as x initial and this 3 as x final. Then when we substitute on this formula, the value of y final is 3 minus the value of y initial is 2, 3 minus 5 divided by the value of x final is 3 minus x initial is 2, which is minus 2 over 1, and then this is minus 2. Then when we put it out of absolute value, we left with 2. Now when we come across combination B to combination C, we are substituting 1 unit of x for 2 units of y. Similarly, when we come across from combination C to combination D, if the satisfaction that we get from 3x and 3y is equal to that of 4x and 2y, then the MRS will be, let's take this 3 as x initial and this 4 as x final, and let's take this 3 as y initial and this 2 as y final, and then when we substitute this information on this formula, the value of y final is 2 minus y initial is 3 divided by the value of x final is 4 minus x initial is 3, and this is minus 1 divided by 1, and this is minus 1. Then when we put it out of absolute value, we left with 1. So this tells us if you get equal satisfaction from 3x and 3y and 4 units of x and 2 units of y, the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another, or simply the MRS, is 1 unit. So we can calculate the marginal rate of substitution in this way. Now, indifference map is a group of indifference curves, and from these indifference curves, higher level of indifference curves represents higher level of satisfaction, and lower indifference curves represent lower satisfaction. So from this curve, the satisfaction that we get from indifference curve 3 is greater than the satisfaction that we get from indifference curve 2. Again, the satisfaction that we get from indifference curve 2 is higher than the satisfaction that we get from indifference curve 1. So the level of satisfaction increases as one moves towards the northeast, and the level of satisfaction decreases as one moves towards the southwest. Another lesson that is related with the indifference curve is the properties of indifference curves. First, as I told you earlier, higher indifference curves represent higher level of satisfaction, and vice versa. Vice versa means the opposite holds true. Higher indifference curves represent higher satisfaction, and lower indifference curves represent lower level of satisfaction. The other property or characteristics of the indifference curve is about the slope. The slope of the indifference curve is negative, or indifference curves are negatively sloped, or they are downward sloping curves. This is the indifference curve. The indifference curve is downward sloping curve or negatively sloped curve due to an inverse relationship between the two variables that are entered in the x and y axes. As we increase consumption of commodity y, we are declining consumption of commodity x, and as we decline consumption of commodity y, we are increasing consumption of commodity x. So an increase in one of the variable will decline, and a decrease in one of the variable will increase the other. So due to this inverse relationship between that are entered in the x and y axes, then the slope of the indifference curve is always negative, or it is downward sloping curve. Another property or characteristics of the indifference curve is indifference curves are convex to the origin. Convex to the origin. This is the origin. When we see from the origin, we get such a curve which is convex to the origin. By the way, indifference curves are convex to the origin due to the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Due to PDMRS, indifference curves are convex to the origin, because the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another will always decline due to the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Another important information, the marginal rate of substitution is the slope of an indifference curve. Since the MRS is calculated by dividing change in the commodity y that is given up for the change in commodity x that is gained, this change in y over change in x will give you the vertical difference for the horizontal difference. Hence, this is the slope of a curve. So, in other words, the marginal rate of substitution, the MRS, is the slope of the indifference curve. Important information about the slope of a curve. From unitary, marginal utility is the slope of the total utility curve. Another point, marginal rate of substitution is the slope of indifference curve, and the slope of the budget line is the ratio of the price of the two goods. From unit 1 lesson, the opportunity cost of a commodity is the slope of the production possibility frontier or curve, and from unit 4, marginal rate of technical substitution MRTS is the slope of isoquants. So let's see the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. This principle tells us the marginal rate of substitution will always decline. It tells us the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another on the same indifference curve will always decline. In short, it tells us the MRS of a commodity will always decline. Let me show you using example. Here, when we calculate the marginal rate of substitution, when we come across from combination A to combination B, the marginal rate of substitution is 3. And when we come across from combination B to C, the MRS is 2. And when we come across combination C to D, the MRS is 1. So the rate by which one commodity is substituted for another will always decline. This is what we call the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution, PDMRS. So this is about the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. This is all about the second revision lesson of Unit 3. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.